You went first, and I remain, to walk life's path alone. My mind is full of memories of the happiness we've known. In spring I'll watch your trees in bloom, when all the earth is new. A sweet reward the fruit will be, as my thoughts are turned to you. You went first, and I remain, with struggles still to face. Each thing you've touched along the way will be a sacred place. I'll hear your voice, I'll see your smile, though blindly I may grope. The memory of your serving hands will lift me up with hope. You went first, and I remain, my life's work not yet complete. I'll work and serve and push forward with faith. No shadows will defeat. Our family and friends are a blessing. They have made our life full of joy. Those memories are a gift from God that death cannot destroy. You went first, and I remain. Our children and grandchildren all pull near. I'll teach them by your example of love and gospel truths, my dear. The last few years have challenged us, a blessing to help our love increase. What a privilege it was to serve you until you were finally released. You went first, and I remain, my strength from you renewed. Remembering our temple covenants, what a blessing to be sealed to you. Beyond the veil you have entered in with Jenny and ancestors too. Using your talent of storytelling, there's missionary work to do. You went first, and I remain. Now you can walk and run. But please walk slowly down that path, for someday I will come. I'll want to know the steps you take, so that I may follow the same. So listen carefully, dear Roy, to hear me call your name. You went first, but I'll be there. We'll embrace and stroll hand in hand. We'll wait and watch for our children as they strive to follow God's plan. Then how blessed the sweet reunions as we welcome them each with love. We'll enter into our Savior's arms, home with heavenly parents above.
One thing I remember about my dad is his ability to work hard and his determination like no other. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, me and my dad my dad had decided that we needed to replace his e-brake system on his truck. And we were out there for about 2.5 hours trying to replace this braking system with no luck. And almost all hope was lost on my end. And my dad seemed pretty determined that we could get it done. I remember we would try and piece these two C-clamps together, and they would constantly just fall apart after we almost had everything together. And my dad was getting pretty frustrated. And I remember telling Dad that, why don't we just take this to a shop? We can get this just fixed up. And he looked at me and he said, Devin, we can do hard things. We're smart and we can figure it out. After multiple YouTube videos and reading forums online, we finally got it all pieced together after about 3 hours. Got the wheels back on and had everything tested, and lo and behold, everything worked perfectly. And as we're driving around, we stopped and we got some ice cream, and he looked over at me and he said, see, Devin, I told you we can do hard things. This is just one short memory of my dad that I'll never forget, and something where he taught me a lot. I am very grateful that I had him in my life to teach me everything I know.
Okay, take a deep breath.
It's going to take more than a deep breath. All right. Oh my goodness. Remember that part where I said be kind, you know? I'm booted. That sounds good.
It says I am booted.
Dad really, he never accepted anything less than the best from himself or his family, really, and that included all of his kids. That's why he's always known, by us and everything that he did, and everybody that he's known is he's been such a hard worker, never let us really be lazy too much. And I think part of that, it bled into everything he did, from the callings that he had in church and magnifying those. And part of that was in scouting too. I think he enjoyed that, but he also understood that he tried his best to really do all that he could. And part of that I remember in him is living by those scout principles often and being prepared in every way, shape, and form that he could be. That's kind of the story that a fond memory I have of him is as a new scout, we had gone on a camp out, and I was ill prepared. It was at a high elevation, kind of on a mountain area. We'd camped overnight, and I was fine. But that next morning, I wasn't wearing all the apparel that I probably should have been wearing, and we hiked up to the side on the side of a mountain. And I just remember being so cold and so hungry by the time that we reached the peak, and kind of miserable at that point. And I just kind of down on myself at that point. And I remember my dad calling me over, and he was on the side of the mountain, and he had brought one of those little camping stoves, and he had heated up a bowl of chicken noodle soup for me and for actually a couple other scouts as well that were really cold. And I just remember that to this day, that not only was my dad prepared, as a scout himself for what possibly could happen, but he was prepared for others, and he was always willing to help and comfort those that needed that. And that bowl of soup, not only was it warm and warmed me up and fed me, helped me feel a little less hungry, but at the same time it taught me a valuable principle that I gained from my dad, and to always be prepared. And it was part of the scout motto, but it was just part of him. To this day, that was probably, to my recollection, one of the best bowls of chicken noodle soup that I've ever had. But it was one of those little moments in time, but a memory that I'll always remember.
Might want to see where the Daniels live. This is a home we built in 2000. We bought an acre of property, and it's in a rural area in Gilbert. We designed the house ourselves. That was back when we had 6. This here is my lime tree. This is a lemon tree here. Next to it is an apricot tree. This is a peach tree. This is a Saratoga plum. There's another apricot tree right here. Orange tree. This is a pink lemonade tree. You see the lemons on it. This is a blood orange tree. This is an Arizona sweet. Geez, seems like we need to be out doing some trimming. This is a wonderful little tangerine tree. We love this tree. Here's a grapefruit tree. Here is a plum tree. Santa Rosa plum. An apple tree called I can't remember the name.
When I think of my dad, I think about his presence and that he was always there for me when I was growing up. He took time to teach and play sports with me. In fact, he was often the coach of my little league and basketball teams. And then as I got a little bit older and I was a scout, he was always really involved in all of my scouting stuff, my merit badges, camp outs. And even though my dad was always had really time-demanding callings, I don't really remember him being absent or not being there when I grew up. And as I got older and I got married, he continued to be a wonderful father. When my car would break down, or if a pipe burst in my home, he would come and he would help me. He'd fix it and teach me how to do it so that next time I didn't have to wake him up in the middle of the night. But that was just him. He would come in the middle of the night and help me out. And that was just the kind of father that he was. He helped me move tons of rock and put in my sprinklers, helped me with my landscaping for, both of my homes. He was always very active. He was there for all my children's baby blessings and baptisms and priesthood ordinations. And he'd regularly take me out to lunch in the middle of the week, just the two of us. And he wanted to know all about my life. And he always was very encouraging, and he would offer his advice and gently and lovingly correct my path. Now, I felt special as a son because I knew that I could call my dad and he would drop everything and anything to talk, to help me, to teach me, just to be with me. He was never too busy for me, and that meant everything in the world to me. A fond memory that I have that's special to me is a time that I got to spend with just my dad and I. Now, I was supposed to go on a scout outing, and I missed the departure of the rest of my scout troop. And so when my dad got home, he wanted me to go on this scout trip. So he says, "Jared, pack up, we're going." So he drives me up the rim, this 2-hour drive, just for me to be with my scout troop. Now, when we arrived, my scout troop wasn't where we thought they would be. And so my dad was really insistent that I be with my scout troop. So we drove, I want to say, a couple of hours looking for my scout troop. And we couldn't just call them because this is before the time of cell phones. And eventually it got dark and we gave up. And that evening I got to pitch a tent and spend a camp out with just my dad and I. And it was a very fond memory for me. And when we woke up the next morning, we'd planned on eating breakfast with my troop, and so we didn't bring any food. And so we just packed up and left. And as we were coming through Star Valley and Payson, he just pulled over to this 260 cafe, and we ate breakfast there. And it's just was such a good, fond memory of my childhood that now that I'm a dad, I often will pull over after a fathers and sons or other trip, and I'll eat breakfast at that same 260 cafe.
I think even from a very young age, he recognized that he was a child of our Father in heaven, and he always strived to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. Definitely was a man of integrity. I remember when we were pretty small, and I think Roy was probably around 10, we used to visit my grandmother up in Snowflake. Well, I remember this one circumstance when we went up there, and we were going to be there on Sunday, and we were all planning on going to church. And so my mom packed all our clothes to go. And so we got up Sunday morning, and everybody started getting dressed to go to church. We recognized the fact that my mom had forgotten to pack our shoes for church. And so she said, "Well, I guess we're just not going to go this time. We don't have the right shoes to go with our white shirts and ties." And after a few minutes, he went to my mom and he says, "Mom, isn't it more important what's in our hearts than what's on our feet?" And so we all sat there and kind of nodded, and we're going, "You know what? That's right." So we all got ready. We put on our tennis shoes to match our white shirts and ties, and we went to church. And that's just the kind of boy that Roy was. He loved me without any shadow of a doubt, and he encouraged me to be the best that I could possibly be. In my eyes, he was the best. He was truly the best.
Oh, good grief, you are a chunk. You want her again?
When I think of Roy, I think of it like the pure love of Christ. So I always think about love with him. I think about what a great example he was for people. Roy just always seemed to be solid in the gospel, and he was a great example to me as I was coming up through the Aaronic priesthood. I think of the example he was as an adult, as a big brother serving a mission, and then helping me as I got prepared to leave on my own. And so integrity, service, amazing service in the gospel, amazing service to his family. I had a wonderful conversation with a family that we're close with, that at a time of need they were in Roy's ward and when he was a bishop, and had to share with me some of the great advice and the pure love they felt from him when they went through a trial and a time in their lives. I think one of my favorite stories with Roy, I was going up to Pine Top on Memorial Weekend, and on the way back, of course, I got a speeding ticket. I remember getting home that night and sharing that with my mom and dad, and my mom was quite upset and told me that I was grounded from my car. So I got up the next day and I rode my 10-speed to McClintock. And the thing I remember the most is I got out of class that day and my dad was there to pick me up. And we were driving home and I was like, well, why are you here? And he goes, well, you'll find out. And I got home that day and my brother Roy come and visit with my mother and talked with her about making sure that in the sense that the punishment met the crime, and that that she needed to show forth more compassion towards her son. And he didn't need to be involved, but he did. And it was a nice moment for my mother, my dad, and I to just talk after the emotions and visit. But that's the way he was. I mean, he was very good at identifying the situation and applying the proper needs that needed to occur. So I look forward to seeing him someday again in the kingdom, being able to hug him again and watch him walk and do the things that he loves to do.
Describing my dad, I would say that he was very dedicated and very determined. When I was little, I used to participate in softball programs. I was not very good, so I was usually in the outfield, and considering how young I was, it was very rare for a ball to go in the outfield. And I remember telling my dad that I really wanted to be a pitcher, that they are front and center and everyone is rooting for the pitcher. And so he told me, he's like, well, let's learn how to pitch. And I thought that was so crazy because we did not have the equipment for softball. A few days went by and I kind of just forgot about it, but the following Saturday, he went to the neighbors and he got a softball, and he just took a blank piece of paper and cut it out to the plates, and he told me to get my gloves and that we were going to go out and we were going to learn to pitch. And we went out there, and I know that was very hard for him because this was the beginning of his disease, so he was having a really hard time being able to stand up and such. So then he could tell that I started getting very frustrated because I just could not get the ball to hit the home plate, and I'm a perfectionist, so the more I messed up, the more angry I would get. And he said, well, let's cool off, let's go inside, and we'll come back out later. And I went inside. I wanted to forget about it. I just wanted to give up. He came back a few hours later. He's like, let's go. We're going outside. We're going to go learn how to pitch. And it got to the point where we practiced so much that the following softball game, I went up to my coach, and he didn't really think that I would be able to pitch, but I begged him, and he let me go out there, and I pitched, and out of the 4 people that batted, I got 3 of them out. I struck them out. And I was so proud of myself, and my dad was so proud of me, and he's just very faithful in me. He knew I could do it. He didn't give up on me, and that's something I will never forget about my dad.
A word to describe my dad would be hardworking. A memory that comes to mind is a lesson that he taught me in junior high school. I had never played, and I knew nothing of how to even play. But my dad told me that with hard work and dedication, I could reach my goal of being able to make the 8th grade volleyball team come tryouts in the fall. So my dad spent money for 3 different summer volleyball camps. I remember one night he spent with me, helping me with my serve, which seemed like hours, as though the night would never end. I had given up mentally, physically, and I was ready to be done. Which, when I finally had made it over the net, he looked at me and said, "See, I told you, you can do it." I worked hard throughout the summer, and when tryouts came, I remember the feeling of wanting to quit again. I felt overwhelmed and as though I would not make it. My dad finally bribed me with a Sonic Banana shake at the end of tryouts that if I had worked hard enough and if I made the team, that on our way home he would treat me with a shake. My dad finally was on his way to pick me up from the last tryout. I got in the truck with a sad face, and when he asked if I had made the team, with a shaken hand, regardless of whether I had made that team or not, I teased with him and said no, as if I wanted to see a reaction of disappointment. As he read the piece of paper that said, "Congratulations, Carrie, you made the team," he looked at me and smiled and said, "See, Carrie, I knew you could do it if you worked hard." I will never forget that feeling that me and my dad shared. I learned that no matter the result in the end, it's about doing your best, working hard, and staying dedicated in life. And I'm very blessed to have him as such a great father and teacher.
Ready? Set. Go.
One of my dad's best characteristics, I think, is his optimism. Throughout his disease and the progression of his disease, he was still always just a strength. Kept his wit all the way up until the end and was always making jokes about him. And I really remember when my sister died, her death was pretty tragic and pretty sudden given the circumstances. And I remember being at her viewing. I remember my dad comforting these people as they came. It's something that I still remember because it was so surprising, not only to me but to others, to see a man who had just lost his oldest daughter in a very tragic way to be such a strength to the people around him. But that's just how my dad was, as he was always being that beacon of light and pressing forward with a brightness of hope. What I remember most is that he was a problem solver. There were 3 of us girls in a very small room, and so he figured out, designed, and built a bunk bed for us that would fit all 3 of us while only taking the space of 1 bed on the floor. And when his disease first started limiting his mobility, he had made up his mind that he was going to build a hoist that could help get him in and out of his bed. Anyway, he called us all over to build this hoist for him, and I don't know, we installed that probably 3 or 4 years ago, and it's still there. and they still used it almost every day. A couple of months ago, we were at my daughter's Christmas concert. My mom got my dad loaded into the ramp van, locked the keys in the car with my dad locked in the car. Anyway, while we're all busy trying to figure this out, my dad, even though he had very limited mobility at this point, slowly pulled something out of the bag. He pulled it out and he slowly but surely pointed it directly at the lock and was able to unlock it. He was always just solving his own problems, and the rest of us are just standing around trying to think of a good idea while he's already solved his own problem.
When I think of my dear sweet Roy, I think of the inspiration he was to me my whole life. We grew up in the same neighborhood, so I have known him for a very long time. He was a man of many hats and juggled them well. He was a server of anyone who needed help and would be there for you. I feel privileged to be the one to spend my life with him. He was my confidant, my listening ear, and my greatest strength as we faced many trials throughout our lives. It has been my privilege to share him with all of you.